But those numbers right there, that's not number 3 best player in the game. That's best player in the game numbers.
Is that person worth it if you guys don't win? What are you paying for then? You're just paying for a great player. It's not actually giving you anything that you're really trying to do.
I would rather get 4 players than have my
lifestyle. It's my lifestyle.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Grounds Crew. I'm your host, Josh Gerson, along with my co-host,
Bill Rahm. What's going on, guys?
Welcome back for another episode. Before we get started, as always, we ask you guys to make sure you like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support, and it helps us make great content for you guys. Bill, you came in hot today with a question for me, and your question was, what do I think of ESPN's top 25 baseball players? Because you seemed, for lack of a better word, pissed about it.
I'm fired up because this is the second time that we've gone through a list and said, hey, what's going on? And listen, it's no secret. You're a definitive Mets fan. I am a Mets fan as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to pull punches. I like my team. And the guys who are great on my team, I want to make sure are respected in a positive way. So I was mad for Mets reasons first. And then I just thought it was an interesting list. I thought it opened up a lot of good conversation, so I wanted to get into it. And we'll get into it right from the top. Mike Trout, number 1 player in the league. Mm-hmm. Agree to disagree?
I agree. I do think he, overall, skill-wise, he is phenomenal. I mean, for me, I feel like there's always kind of questions with the top people in any sport when you talk about who's number 1 and who's number 2, because 99% of the time they are almost the same player whenever you kind of discuss who's the best. So I don't mind it. Obviously, there's people who have different opinions about how he plays the game versus other people, like, for example, Mookie Betts or people like that.
Who's number 2 on the list?
Who is number 2 on the list. And you could easily flip-flop them and no one would really bat an eye at it. I do think Mike Trout's still kind of the golden boy to some degree of – in the league, everyone just kind of looks to him as the guy who has it all.
Well, listen. I'm with you. Mookie Betts, I think, is close to being a Mike Trout level guy. Mm-hmm. But I think that we've talked about the Mike Trout, Mookie Betts. Mike Trout's 1,000 OPS on autopilot almost every single year. Mookie's not necessarily all the way there, but also we've discussed Mike Trout's doing this when his team sucks and it doesn't lead to winning, right? There's no pressure.
Yep.
What are his numbers going to look like when it matters for him to play well, right?
Yep.
Is he gonna instead of trying to hit a ball for a hit, right? Is he gonna do a sac fly, right? And now the batting average isn't the same. These other things change. This other stuff manipulates, and you do things that are winning baseball plays that aren't necessarily statistical generating plays. So I don't know who he is. Then Mookie has been in the throes of always winning, right? He won when he was with Boston. He's winning now that he's a Dodger.
Yeah.
So the dude's just a winner. So his numbers have to be looked at in the prism of we're winning World Series. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Yep. And Mike doesn't get there. And what I would say becomes the interesting point to me is who had better numbers last year than Juan Soto?
Juan Soto's line was kind of crazy.
344, 442, 594, right? We're talking an 1,100 OPS. Excuse me. That's actually Ted Williams' numbers.
Soto
was
better.
351, 496, 95. Guys, we're talking now at 1,200 OPS. Obviously, it's a shortened season, and it's a completely different point of view of what's going on. But those numbers right there, that's not number 3 best player in the game. That's best player in the game numbers.
Yeah.
And those are better numbers than anything Mike Trout ever put up. They're better than Mike Trout's season last year. So, how is this list being ranked? So if this list is being ranked, right, you've now established to me that history matters.
Yep.
This isn't just about who this player was last year. It's who they have been and who do I think they're going to be. Mm-hmm. But if I'm going who they were last year and who I think they're going to be, is Trout getting better?
Trout's just staying as good as he has been, right?
So yeah. Soto has a shot at this is going to be sustained run of him being this guy, which would mean that he wins in who's going to be the better player long term. Soto,
Yeah.
right? You'd rather have Soto than have Trout.
Well, he's already moving up the rankings. He was 11 last year.
Yes.
In 2020.
But that's my point. The rankings have some stuff. So,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm going. So Trout to me doesn't win out in the long term. And then who was he last year? He was worse than Soto.
Yeah.
So 2 out of the 3 criteria we're saying we're using, Soto was better. So now that means that we have a pretty heavily weighted thing to what have you done.
Yep.
So I want us all to remember that in today's podcast as we move into other people. What are your thoughts?
You definitely make a good point, and I think at least them bringing him up from outside the top 10 into the top 3, that's important. And I think if he does sustain that into this season, has a great full season, then you might see him in the top 2 or even possibly 1. But he's a young guy, and I would love to see him keep trending up like this because that is greatest player in the game, greatest player ever type numbers. So
and we can say whatever we want about Fernando Tatis.
Yep.
He's not that guy.
Yep. It's different.
And,
it's different.
And that's the thing. Is like Soto is maybe not as flashy and flamboyant. He doesn't.
But
play,
he definitely does do that too. So.
But he I think it goes back to our shortstop conversation, right? If you play shortstop, people think of you differently.
Yep.
You play a corner position, you're not as valuable because of some fake thing that we used to think was real that nobody had actual analytical numbers to back up. So, like, everybody's having to unencumber themselves from things that they always thought were real that weren't real.
Right.
So, like, then you start getting into it. Ronald Acuna had a solid line last year, only a 250 batting average, listed number 4 on the list. Do you like that organization of how all those guys ended up?
I don't mind it. Who else is further down? Yeah, I think that's okay where he is. I like Soto being above Acuna. I think there's a lot of people who are a little too hot on Acuna sometimes. I've seen some reporters and things out there trying to tell me he's better than Trout in certain times. But I like how that is with Soto above him. I think he's got a ton of potential. And I think just the way he plays the game, you could just see he has that edge to him of being the competitor that can take you places.
And then they're all above the only other outfielder in the top 10, which is Christian Yelich. And I agree that they all should be above Yelich, but Yelich is a perfect example of where we're waiting last year as not that big of a deal, right? We're saying what you've done matters the most, right? And we're going to make a ranking of who's going to be the best player based a lot on what you've done. Listen, historical data is important in baseball. It tells you a lot about who the player is. But Yelich was an atrocity last year, right? And he was, almost didn't bat 200. Yeah. So, like, when we're looking at that as a thing, I get batting average isn't the end-all, be-all that people ultimately have recognized. But he was not a top 10 player last season. And his season before is astronomical.
Yep.
But it's also outsized from any of his other seasons. So, like, if we're looking at Yelich, do we think Yelich is a top 10 player?
Well, based on, like, the criteria we were talking about, right, I think they have been using previous years where they were at, things like that. So I don't, like, totally hate it because it's in there. I think for him to validate it this season would be important going into next year for rankings and stuff like this. But basing it on their performance from last year, I'm fine with it. I don't necessarily think he couldn't be in the top 10. I don't know, if you told me he was like 13, it wouldn't shock me either.
And that's my thing is, like, looking at this list,
because I would put him behind Cody Bellinger.
Looking at this list, it just doesn't end up, to me, it doesn't make any sense. They pick and choose because a guy like Freddie Freeman is above him, right? I think Freddie Freeman in this
Freddie's 7.
Is 7.
Yeah.
Freddie just had his best season of his entire career.
Yeah.
1,100 OPS. He wins the MVP award. Congratulations. That's impressive. But if we look at what he was outside of that, he's a really, really good player. But is he a top 10 player in the game? Like, I never would have considered Freddie Freeman top 10. He made a big leap. And
is he your best first baseman in the game?
I'd say that I think that Freddie's got to be in that conversation, and I'd say yes. If you were like, who would you have if you had like an ultimate team and you could have anybody you want? Yeah, I'd say right now Freddie Freeman I would take over a lot of other guys. High batting average, walks, can hit home runs, can do a lot of things, but I'm also stained and tainted by what he did last year, just like everybody is. But like now you're valuing that even higher, and you're putting more emphasis on what it is. And I think that's to tell me Freddie Freeman's a top 10 player, number 7. Because again, here's my biggest one of my biggest problems with this entire list. Is Freddie Freeman this close to Jacob Degrom as a player?
No.
Jacob Degrom comes in number 6, behind Garrett Cole, which is the second biggest atrocity on this list. The second biggest atrocity of their list. In the last 4 years, do you know how many times Garrett Cole has been a better pitcher than Jacob Degrom? Statistically? I'll give you the answer. It's 0.
0? Yeah, I was going to say
0 times. In the last 4 years, he's never had an ERA better than Jacob Degrom in any situation.
It's tough to do.
Anywhere. Anywhere. His best season here. Now, he gets rewarded because he had a 360 strikeout season. But that year, Jacob Degrom had a 1.70 ERA. You're not better than Jacob Degrom. At what point in time, and in this they say...
That was the season he should have had 30 wins, right?
Why he's here, yeah. Garrett Cole, number 5, why he's here. Baseball's best pitcher admitted to being affected by the stop-and-start nature of last year's season. He is not baseball's best pitcher. He has not been. He has never been. It is Jacob Degrom, and it's not close. At some point in time, we were all confused because Jake went from being a guy who wasn't supposed to be there, right? Late 20-something round draft pick, like was a shortstop, converted to pitcher. He's never supposed to. But we're talking now a guy who's been Rookie of the Year, right? Multiple Cy Young awards. This isn't recent. He has dominated since the day he started, and he hasn't let up, and he's only getting better.
Yes.
Garrett Cole is a really good pitcher. He is top 5 pitchers in the game. Great. He is not better than Jacob Degrom. It's an absolute travesty to put him ahead of Jacob Degrom. There has to be a gap. And my point is, right there, Garrett Cole is not better than Jacob. It's not close. It's not even remotely a conversation. Next. And now I am the guy who's always like, well, you know, it's harder for American League pitchers because they have a DH. Well, last year Jacob had a better ERA and he had a DH in the National League.
Right.
So that's thrown out.
Yep.
It's thrown out. I can't look at it. And was a better pitcher and always is. Always is. So Jacob Degrom being behind Garrett Cole, that you can't do that. That can't be a thing. I would put Jacob Degrom. I'd rather have Jake than Acuna. And
yes.
I wouldn't say, and Acuna is an amazing player, and I think he's an incredible player. But I would rather have Degrom over him, and I'd rather have Soto over Acuna.
Okay. Yeah.
Acuna, to me, has a lot of versatility. He does a lot more things. Soto, to me, is scary with a bat.
Yes.
Like, Soto, to me, is like, ooh, I got Barry Bonds vibes.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
I got Barry Bonds vibes.
He comes out to the plate, and you know it's going to be a difficult out all the time.
And yeah, listen, last year was with a shortened season, but when you slug 700, like I don't know, I don't care if it's a 45 game stretch, guys. You slug 700 in 45 games. That's nutty scary, and he was 21 years old. And I think there's more to push there. But what's your take on the Garrett Cole, Jacob Degrom thing?
Well, I think it goes back to like we were talking about before of like there's always a conversation of who's the 1-2, what are the differences there? And I know statistically, obviously, Jacob Degrom has been a step above. But there's obviously a lot of people who feel that skill-wise Garrett Cole is neck and neck with him. I wholeheartedly agree that Jacob Degrom is a better pitcher. I think he should be higher on this list as well. I think he should be in the 3-4 spot.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're the best pitcher in baseball, you have to be valued as a top 3 player in the league. It's just there's always you have to have a good pitcher. You have to have the ace in the league, and then you can have other people beneath that. I get you have a position player as your number 1 guy because they have to do a lot more things and whatever. But yeah, Jacob Degrom over Garrett Cole, it's not close for me.
Yeah, and people will say, oh, well, a position player plays every day. but a pitcher only, plays once every 5 days.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If Jacob Degrom's your pitcher, you score 2 runs, you win. Like, you can have a situation where Mike Trout hits 4 home runs in a single day and his numbers look great for an entire year, but they lost that game because you didn't have the pitching that backed it up. Your success in that game did not lead to victory. A pitcher can literally go out, shut out another team, and there's no conversation. The win is his.
Yep.
Right? So, like, I think wins are a bad reference because they rely on the offense, but I think success of a player, pitchers are so valuable when they can dominate to the level that a guy like Jake has for the time that he has. So I'm with you. I think 4 is where I would slot him because I do think Soto is going to be a freakazoid. So I don't want to put a pitcher above a guy who I think is a legendary bat potentially. But the fact that Freddie Freeman is the guy buttressing up right against Jacob Degrom, like, Freddie Freeman should not be there.
Yeah, there feels like a significant gap there where Jacob Degrom needs to be higher.
So who do you think is then too low? Who should replace a guy like Freddie? Who should replace a guy like Tatis coming in top 10, number 8 in the game? Do we think that that's where he should be? Do we think that's too high? Do we think that's the right thing?
Where'd you have him? 8? I don't mind that, but also looking at how rankings have been with the Padres, everyone's a little hot on them right now, but I do think Tatis is an overall great player.
Is he the best shortstop in the game?
To me, no. I love Francisco Lindor.
And again, now we're talking,
and it's not even Mets bias for me.
So,
it was always, when he was on the Indians, I'm like, everything that guy does is phenomenal.
And that's the thing, is he hasn't swung the bat for the Mets one time yet, and I don't think he's ever put up some of the stuff that Tatis did in a silly season. But last 3 years before last year's shortened season, his worst OPS was 842. He had 33 home runs. Yeah, I gotta say with you, I think it's bold to use one season as the reference. Again, now we're prioritizing last year to an astronomical degree for this one guy and for Freddie Freeman. But then there's other guys who aren't being pushed forward enough for it, and there's also guys who aren't being penalized. So last year, if you played well, it's because you're good. If you played bad, it's because it was a shortened season.
Yep.
And I don't think that that's a fair reference point. Yelich was barely affected by it, but you're seeing other guys who are taking these big leaps and these big moves up. So Lindor ends up coming in number 10. So I would say I'm not like super disappointed. If you've told me who would you rather have, I'd probably tell you even after the Mets just made that trade, I'd trade for Tatis because the future.
Yeah.
He's younger. He's going to be able to do what he's doing right now for longer.
Sure.
But I don't know if there's a chasm between them. And that rounds out the top 10. And the top 10 is then right up against Nolan Arenado coming in as the 11th best player in the game. Agree or disagree?
This is a tough one for me because
the Colorado thing.
Sure, there's definitely a little bit to that. I hate to say it, I do love Alex Bregman as a player. Statistically, he's been a beast. He's great defensively. But, there's always that little asterisk from some of his past seasons.
And last year, again, if you looked at Bregman 242 batting average. He had only an 800 OPS. It was one of his worst seasons. So, was he impacted by that? But Arenado didn't play well either.
Yep.
And Arenado batted a few percentage points higher. Didn't really do much else. I think Bregman definitely is getting the I'm a cheater knockdown.
Yes.
And that's why Arenado's going up above him. But yeah, Arenado to me is a really, really good player.
Yeah, and I think defensively he's probably a touch above Bregman. I think he's the best defender at third base in the game. The stuff he does is just incredible. And they have had comparable hitting seasons and things like that. But I think I could swap those guys and not be too.
Well, it's interesting because the 11 through 20 is third base heavy.
Yep. Well,
right?
what I thought was interesting too is that I think having Rendon below Bregman is kind of a stretch. I would have put them near each other, probably Bregman behind him. Like them three for me are very interchangeable because I think they're all very much in the same category of being an elite defender.
And I personally, I think Rendon's the best.
Okay.
I don't
hate that either. Yeah.
I don't think it's close, and I think Rendon's a better player than Freddie Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rendon's a top 10 player.
I think we talked about it 2 episodes ago, like the value of a third baseman, and I think there's a lot of times where it's more valuable than a first baseman.
And he's such a good defensive player,
mm-hmm.
but then his bat is so much more ridiculously good than either of the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his last year was a meh year for a lot of people. He had a 915 OPS. The year before that, he had 1,000 OPS. The year before that, a 910 OPS. The year before that, a 930 OPS. So if we're looking over the last 4 seasons, he's a 900-plus OPS guy 4 times. Last year, his batting average is 286. That's better than both of those guys played last year.
Mm-hmm.
What are we ranking those guys ahead of him for? Bregman, I get, had 1 year where they were winning and he was hitting well and he was doing well. Rendon's the best third baseman in the game. It's not Nolan Arenado. His numbers are gassed up from being in Colorado. You can tell me that he's one of the top 25 players in the game. I'm here for you. I agree with you. But I would take Rendon over him. I'd take Rendon over him in a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't think twice. And I think that, again, the Angels themselves being overshadowed by Trout to some degree, you don't realize how awesome some of the other guys. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani killing the game, another 5 strikeouts.
They have a great lineup. Like, no cap. They have a phenomenal hitting lineup. They need to pitch to win.
Those 3 guys and Ohtani pitching are going to hammer balls.
Yep.
And again, I think that's going to come back to, we have to stop looking at those guys under Trout and Trout under them,
mm-hmm.
because you now have a situation where you got to perform with other guys performing. Because last year Rendon hit well.
Yep.
Was he Trout? No, but I don't expect Rendon to be that close to Trout. But he was close,
mm-hmm.
and he's the same guy he's been.
Yep.
And there's a reason why he got all that money to leave the Nationals and go there. Like, the dude is a stud. I think Rendon should be higher. I think having him outside the top 10 to me is one of the bigger points of contention I have with the list.
Mm-hmm.
And then another guy who absolutely killed it last year, Jose Ramirez.
Yeah, he's a sleeper,
and
but he shouldn't be.
And that's my point. Again, It's why do some guys get the benefit of the doubt on stuff? Last year, 993 OPS. The year before that, 806. The year before that, 939, 957, 825. And earlier in his career, when he was younger and he was figuring the game out, he wasn't as great of a player.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, if I'm using the last 5 years, his worst year is an 800-plus OPS. And that's what we're talking about was a guy like Bregman and a guy like Nolan Arenado last year.
Right.
So, that's my point. How are we valuing these guys?
Mm-hmm.
Ramirez is obviously more of a bat than a defender than some of those guys. But, I mean, he's a better bat. So it's just interesting when you see all that stuff to start to recognize, what are these lists even coming through with, and the then piece being, is Manny Machado properly rated?
Where's Manny? 20?
Yeah.
Is Manny Machado? What were his stats from last year?
So Manny Machado is currently rated, just so that we get it, he's currently rated behind Trevor Bauer,
mm-hmm.
Jose Ramirez, Walker Buehler, DJ LeMahieu. Would you put Manny Machado above any of those guys? I know one guy. Trevor Bauer doesn't deserve to be in the top 25 players. That's too much recency bias.
That's
way too, and that goes back to my point on this list.
Yep.
We are going to say if you did well, we'll shoot you up the ranks. If you did poorly, right, that didn't count. It's just that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit of a 50-50 on, you got up there, cool. It's a little bit harder to slide out of the top 10, top 25. But if you're doing great and you get in there, awesome. We're gonna shoot you up there.
Bauer last year on this list was 88.
Yeah,
He
that's
jumped
crazy.
from 88 to
That's
16.
crazy. Well, I think there would have
on
been
a shortened season where he made like 11 starts.
There would have been an outcry if he wasn't in the top 25. Everyone
Why?
would have been recency bias.
Well,
Absolutely.
who would outcry?
The fans.
What fans? I think most people think Trevor Bauer is gassed up right now, and he's not.
Oh no, it's two ends of the spectrum. It's no, he's not that good. He's gassed up right now. Or yo, he's the best player in the game.
I mean, he just got absolutely shelled for 4 or 3 home runs in one inning,
yeah.
and he said he wasn't trying. So
Yeah.
the manager of the other team, so we'll pull this in here. Manager of the other team is talking, and he goes, "Oh, our guys actually weren't trying for the first 4 innings. We decided to try in the 5th, and it worked out for us. And we ended up hitting a bunch of home runs." I know that Trevor Bauer said that he was trying in the first 4 but wasn't trying in the 5th, but we weren't trying when he was trying.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason that he looked good. And then one of the reporters was like, were the guys hitting with their
one eye closed?
And he was like, no, they were hitting with their eyes closed while they were trying to breathe through their eyelids in order to work on some things that are going to be important for them through the rest of the season.
Yep.
Absolute fucking legend.
Yes.
That he said that.
Yep.
Because
loved
Bauer's a joke with that shit.
Yeah, it's tough.
Dude, when you kill it, you have a reason you killed it, and when you suck, you have a reason you sucked. And it's never that you suck. But you've been a pretty good pitcher. You're a number 3 pitcher who had one great season. And now you're walking around like you were worth $40 million. Like, this is going to be so hard for him.
Yeah, it's
because
tough.
he's going to let up some runs.
Yep.
And that's why I said, like, I don't think anybody would care if he wasn't in the top 25. I think it's a travesty that he's in the top 25. He is non-deserving of being in the top 25. He's not one of the top 25 pitchers in the game. He being ahead even of Walker Buehler, his teammate, like, bro, I don't even know if they're gonna start you ahead of Walker Buehler this year. Like you're gonna like carry his jock. Like stop it,
Yeah,
stop
it's
it.
tough.
ESPN's just trying to SEO this thing. Like this is all about showing up in search engines.
Yeah.
This isn't a real list, and it starts crumbling more and more.
And I think too, and like you're saying, like there's a lot of people who aren't with what he's been doing, and I think when he did that, whatever it was, like his second start, pitching with one eye closed, I know a lot of people were kind of rubbed the wrong way with that, and he's done it a lot. It's just that him not taking the game seriously, and like I get it, you want to have fun, you want to do all this stuff, but there's like a line, and I think this entire season, he's gonna have a microscope on him, and when he screws up, he's gonna get blasted. And I think at some point that's gotta weigh kind of heavy on you and take a toll, even if you won't admit it subconsciously. That's gonna affect
We'll
you.
find
It has to.
out. We'll find out because like he said he didn't care in the past, and then he's throwing balls over the back, and you know he's losing his shit, and he's getting upset because he sucks. I think he's hard on himself, and like I'm fine for him closing his eyes and doing the pitching, right? Don't tell me you weren't trying. Even saying that publicly after you got absolutely shelled, bro, you look like a clown. You look like a little kid who's like, I didn't want to play anyway. Like, just don't be that guy.
Yeah,
you
that's
already
tough. It's a bad look.
already are considered a little douchey. Like, don't double down on it. Don't double down on the douche. Like, don't be that guy. And then we talk about last year not affecting people, but then affecting people. Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer comes in at 21. He has a 2 ERA most seasons. He has a 3.7 last year, and he falls down. So now last year affected him.
Yep.
Like he moved from being the 7th rated player to the 21st player on one season. Well, so if one season matters, then this list should be covered with. Yelich should not be on this list. He shouldn't be in the top 25 based off of last year. But he is.
Yep.
Why? Oh, because the past does matter. I hate when there's not a consistency in how you rated people. Like, tell me ahead of time, this is what we did. It just seems like a pile of junk. And, like, just killing me.
See, this is why I don't mind MLB's lists, because they at least are mostly based on statistics. Like, they put it in the shredder, whatever they call it, but it's mainly statistical based. So, cool. You're spitting out numbers to me, and you have a reason for it. Great. These ones, you can tell that there's so much different opinions being thrown around, and there's nothing really to it.
And it just doesn't hold up under scrutiny. You have different writers who are given different points, and each writer's coming up with some bullshit that just doesn't end up, like, getting there. DJ LeMahieu is in the top 20, which also, like we said, means that he's considered a better player than Manny Machado. DJ LeMahieu absolutely gets a performance bump for being a Yankee. Not just that people perceive him as better. It is easier to hit home runs in Yankee Stadium and the AL East for home run numbers because the parks are small and accidents happen. I accidentally pop up and it goes out, right? Because it happens to be, 214 down a line. That wasn't skill, it was luck. It has a huge component of if you were anywhere else, it's an out. And some of those things in the raw numbers are not picked up. In other advanced metrics, they can isolate based off of the park you play in to give you a more fair value. But when lists and numbers are brought up, LeMahieu's always pushed to the top. And I think LeMahieu is a really, really great player. I think he's an absolute stud. I think the Yankees did the right thing. But we know he's not top 20 by how hard it was for him to even get a contract. Like, nobody was trying to sign him for money. And then the Yankees signed him for some money. Yeah. He's doing okay.
Well, I think it too is, like, as a second baseman, actually, the majority of teams don't want to pay top dollar for it because it's something you can kind of get interchangeable with. If he has a great bat, awesome, but the majority of second basemen don't. So they're kind of like...
Well, is that the case anymore?
It's definitely changing, and
we talked about that last
DJ's
episode.
Obviously top of the market of that.
Is he?
According to this list, yeah.
According to this list, but we'll come back to that because I have big data for later.
Okay.
We're gonna go down because a lot of the other guys in the top 25, Trevor Story, fine player, disagree just because he's ahead of somebody who I think should be here.
Okay.
Aaron Judge, 24, disagree. When's the last time Aaron Judge was good?
2 years ago, probably.
His rookie year?
Rookie year? Is that 2017?
Last year, 890 OPS. Like, that's really solid. But, like, that's not as good as Dom Smith. So, what are we using as the recency bias? The last 2 seasons, Dom Smith's a better hitter statistically than Judge. So why is Judge here? Right? It's again, that doesn't make any sense. It's like something that we think we should be saying, but it's not something that feels like it's based in reality.
Right. And
that brings me to the guy who I don't believe is a top 25 player. I understand why people think it, but it's Bryce Harper. And Bryce Harper last year was really good, high 900, better OPS than Aaron Judge. I don't know why Aaron Judge is ahead of him. Aaron Judge still living on his 52 home run 2017 season. I think Harper is a really, really good player. I can hear your argument for top 25. I just don't feel like I look at Harper the same way anymore.
No, I don't either. And just kind of looking further on into the 26 to 50, I think this 25 slot, there's a ton of people that you could pop in and out of there, and it wouldn't shock me. But I wouldn't have had Harper in the top 40, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it's
like you're telling me that he's a better / more valuable player now than Steven Strasburg or Matt Chapman.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I think he's kind of fallen off a little bit.
And even staying in that list on his own team, I'd rather have JT Realmuto than Harper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the value that he brings, like he's got the bat, and he's got what you need from that position. Again, last year an 840 OPS. Does the numbers, plays what we would consider to be a more premium position, though I would say that the premium of that position has dropped down. But you also have to look at it based off of how good are you comparable to anybody else who does what you do. And Realmuto is, a fair bit ahead of a lot of other guys with the bat. So he fell. He was 23. Harper has been sitting in the same zone for a while. That's one where, 100% I would say I don't agree. But I think this, and again, I'm going to bring my Mets fandom back into why I'm angry at this list. And I think you might know where I'm going. How in the Sam hell, based off of any assessment you possibly can have, are any of those players considered better than Jeff McNeil?
It's a great question. It is a great question because
Jeff just had his worst season of his career, and he had an 836 OPS. And he's not in the top 50.
Yeah, it's tough.
He is not in the top 50 players.
Is he really?
He is not in the top 50 players. This is why I didn't tell you all my stuff.
Oh,
Gleyber Torres is considered better than him. Pete Alonso is still considered a better player than him. Pete comes in at 48. Pete had an atrocity of a season last year. Why are we valuing home runs so damn high?
That's brutal.
Absolute brutal. Like,
I did not realize that. Oh my god.
We have Rafael Devers is considered a better player than Jeff McNeil.
That's crazy.
And guys like well,
let me ask you this: did they put him as an outfielder?
No, they have him listed on this list as a second base outfield, dual position.
That's crazy. Every other sports network has him as the 2-3 second baseman in the league.
And his 319, and this is the thing that they say inside of this, guys. His 319 batting average since 2018 is the best in Major League Baseball since he came in. So we're talking over the last 3 years, we have the guy with the highest batting average, who hits home runs, has a middle 800 to high 800 OPS in that time. That cat isn't even a top 50 player. Who also is not a top 50 player is Jose Altuve, who I think also is getting like
trash season
last year. But last year, so like last year he was bad. But you're still telling me he's better than Jeff McNeil, whose worst year was last year and he's at 840 OPS. That's better than Nolan Arenado. That's better than Bregman. Why is Jeff McNeil not in the top 25 players? And if you're going to tell me not top 25, fine. I'll hear you out. I'll go with it. He is absolutely should be somewhere in that 25 to 50 list. And the fact that he's not, again, you guys, you've lost me. And here are some other numbers. Here are some other guys who have not been better than Jeff McNeil over the last 3 years. So in the last 3 years, this player has made 2 All-Star games, plays a higher, quote-unquote, position, and he has been somewhere in the same ballpark in that time as Jeff. Jeff has comparable WAR to Trevor Story. He has comparable WAR in that time and has a better batting average and has done more, had better OPS seasons than Corey Seager.
Okay.
So
I think Corey had his best year.
Last year was Corey's best year. The season after that, 817. That's worse than Jeff McNeil. The season before that, 744. So again, we're saying that Trevor Story is a better player. In the last 3 years, he has one season better than Jeff McNeil. So what are we biasing this? Are we using?
That's a home run.
What is making? It's
right?
only home runs, and that's my thing. Is like how are we going to value? You're valuing a statistic that we know doesn't matter. It's OPS. OPS is the thing that matters. If a guy, so again, using the Mets as one of the guys who's a big OPS guy, mid 800 OPS guy who doesn't hit a lot of home runs is Brandon Nimmo. But Nimmo hits 50 doubles a year.
Yeah.
Right. It was the same thing that everybody saw with a guy like why am I blanking on his name? Second baseman from the Mets went to the Nationals. Why am I blank?
Daniel Murphy.
Daniel Murphy. Daniel Murphy was a guy who 40 doubles and he'd hit 12 home runs. And then he figured out how to pull the ball more at the MLB level.
Yep.
And he hit big home run numbers.
Yes, he did.
But his OPS didn't change that much because he was getting more outs. Right. Other superficial numbers started to improve. But the home runs. But then everybody thought he was a way better player because of the home runs.
Right.
And it's like we have to separate some of this. But the fact that there is that 2 out of 3 years. Seager is not better. Maybe you want to say he's better defensively for sure, right? Great. He is not that much better that a guy like McNeil doesn't deserve to be in the top 25. And if you don't want to be in the top 25, he better be in the top 50.
Top 50.
And the fact that he's not, again, just it buoys this list that ESPN is out here just not trying to make real lists. And it just hurts my soul to see something like this. Because I'm here for the hot takes. I'm here for people to give me hot takes. But, like, show me where this stuff is.
Devers being above him is actually ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
crazy.
We're like, what is it? What's the thing? One season, he had a 900 OPS. Guess what? So did McNeil. So, like, what are you using as the frame of reference for this? Because he's younger?
That's crazy.
Like, there's nothing statistic. And this is why Mets fans have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder when they talk about anything is because we get the little brother syndrome on the radio here locally, right? You take things to heart when it's not there. But Aaron Judge is not a top 25 player. DJ LeMahieu is maybe a top 25 player. The fact that that better Mets players are not on the list goes to show why Mets fans feel the way they do about things. This Mets team is way better than everybody realizes. You and me think it, and everybody, if you listen to this podcast, it's because you guys are... Last year, Michael Conforto had a .322 batting average. And he had a overall .927 OPS. He's got an .843 OPS for his career, including the year he was coming off when he completely separated his shoulder out of his socket. If you throw that season away, he most likely would have looked somewhere in the .875, .880 range as an OPS. The dude's a stud who's not... He hit 33 home runs in 2019. Last year, he has a .927 OPS. Why is Michael Conforto not in the top 50 players? He's been a better player or the equal of a guy like Bryce Harper. He's been a better player or equal of since 2017 of a guy like Aaron Judge. He's been a better player than Aaron Judge since Aaron Judge has played baseball. Aaron Judge has one season where he hit a bunch of home runs. In that year where Michael Conforto only played in 109 games, he hit 27 home runs, had .939 OPS. Guys, what is baseball? And
like what is this list, honestly?
And ESPN, it's... I know a couple of years ago, ESPN had to cut a bunch of people.
I was thinking about that. They're
a bunch
limited.
Of people. Those people ended up at The Athletic. Those people ended up...
ESPN's baseball content is limited now. You know?
I agree. I agree.
Like Baseball Tonight. What was that? 3 years ago they cut that show?
Because you don't have anybody who's a real... You have, the basic beat reporters. You start out there, and your job, hey, just follow this team. You can do it remotely. Just give me content as often as you can. And it's not about quality of understanding things anymore. And a list like this comes together, and it's just now I know why baseball's struggling is. It just doesn't seem like people are putting in any effort. The top of the list is just I know this name. This name, Trevor Bauer. I know his name.
That's all. Exactly. That's all it is.
He's been on other channels. Let me use his name. Let me put him in the top 10. And then, podcasts like ours show up, and we're talking about this. But, bro, that's a terrible list. That's a terrible list. A terrible list.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing here. I think there's... It's definitely hey, we're just going to grab all the big names, put them on a list. It's going to be semi-right. It's a lot of other people's opinions are going to say that it's different. Whatever. I always feel with these lists, too, you're looking at guys, because there's people out there who will use these lists as, hey, these are your comparable guys when you go to contract, when you go to arbitration.
Yep.
That's always the thing. I was watching a whole thing on how they look at your comparable players and then help you value for arbitration. And if you're going to tell me that Rafael Devers gets X money and Jeff McNeal is going to go into his arbitration and they're going to be like, yo, Rafael Devers got X and he's better than you, so you're going to get this, right? There's someone out there, some stat guy that's going to go look at this and be like, what am I going to do here? And I just don't – there's always something wrong with this. There's something flawed here.
And listen, the guy who I think is supremely undervalued – on the list, our guy Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani comes up on this list as 73. Last year when he was on the list, he was 34.
That's crazy.
Again, 34 to me is slightly low on my bullishness for him.
Sure.
73 I get. I absolutely understand. But Ohtani's going to crush that list, and it's going to make this list look stupid. I wish somebody would have taken a shot and a gamble on him. Somebody who I just saw being on the list, who I have to have a little bit of a discussion about because he's a better pitcher than Trevor Bauer, and he's not. He did not get the love. Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler comes in on that list as number, I believe, 72 or 73. And Yeah, he comes in at 72. Zach Wheeler's a better pitcher than that. Last year, he was a 2.9 ERA moving to the Phillies. So you expect his ERA to rise. He's been a mid-3 ERA guy for a number of years now. He is a better pitcher statistically over a lifetime than a guy like Bauer.
Right.
Bauer's got a recency bias that's crazy.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, last year they had Wheeler at 83 and you had Bauer at 88. That makes sense. You guys knew it then. What changed? We're overdoing this. And then obviously I'm a sucker for this list right now because they keep doing it.
They triggered you hard.
They trigger me hard. I look at it and you see guys like that, and you're right. Like, guys won't make the money that they'll make because of the fact that they're not listed in these articles. They're not put. There's not press and publicity for them. And I just found Conforto's listed at 53. He's a better player than Pete Alonso. How is he 53? Like that does just the guys like using some basic idea there. So what do you think the changes could be? Because a guy like Conforto is currently up for a new contract. How does he value himself? Because if you told me he asked for a deal that's similar to Bryce Harper, you could justify it for me statistically.
For his, you're saying as like his yearly contract
number,
value?
$30 million a year.
I don't think he's going to get that, honestly.
I know he's not going to get it. But my question is, why not?
Statistically, yes, I think there is some weight to that, but I don't think he's not going to go out there and
is
say.
Is he going to get $20 million?
It depends if they're going to pay Lindor.
I don't think it depends. The question is, does he get $20 million?
For how many years?
Does he get a 5-year, $100 million contract?
I don't think that's impossible.
And to me, the fact that 5 years, $100 million is like even a question boggles my mind. Like I don't know what we're using as the frame of reference.
Well, I like to hope that there's some kind of more intelligent thing
he's
they
an
use.
850. He's an 850 OPS guy who batted 300 plus multiple times. Like I don't like. That's where even the contracts to me are just crazy. What are you valuing and what are you justifying? Like I get people will say the reason why a guy like Harper got more money is because he sells tickets and he gets people to come. Sure, 100%. I agree. I don't think he's even that player anymore though.
No, he's not. He's definitely gotten a little quieter. But I will say for Conforto, he's only been getting better. Like, for sure, you see it. So that's why I don't disagree with you that if the Mets wanted to extend him long-term for a bunch of money, I don't hate that because he is a great player and he's getting better.
But if he gets 5 years, $96 million, is that a steal?
Kind of, yeah.
It's not kind of to me. It's a steal.
Yeah.
And then this brings up, again, the same situation. There's a guy like Brandon Nimmo. Nimmo's going to end up being happy to get $10 million a year. And he's got an 800-plus OPS for his career.
Yeah. No, Nimmo's quietly a really good center
Really
fielder.
good player.
Yeah. It's
really
just,
good player.
Yep, it's super low-key.
And you look at some of the contracts that some of these guys have where they're making all this money, and it's like, what did MLB look at that defines it? You know, and you look at the NFL. Like, the NFL makes sense. Right?
Yep.
The NFL makes sense. I know who's making what. The only position that seems to be freaky is quarterback.
Yep.
And I think quarterbacks are relatively overvalued, but that's a separate thing. The NBA doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they just throw money at people.
But also, like, because there's a max contract that any one person can get inside of it, you have a situation where the best players in the world are underpaid. Like, LeBron is underpaid at $30 million a year.
Yep.
Right? Like, $35 million, $40 million. He's underpaid. Chris Paul is making $40 million right now. He's one of the top 5 highest paid players in the league. He's being overpaid. Right? But then you have a guy like making $33 million a year. Like Mike Conley was a pretty good point guard. He was making $35 million. No shot. But he's deserving of a quote-unquote max.
Yeah.
Based off of who he is, he's deserving that max. but that player's not worth it.
Right.
So, like, but the NBA, you know what's coming
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that those cap and those numbers exist. Like, if a guy outplays it, like the Knicks right now have Julius Randle killing it. He's only making $20 million.
Right.
And when he signed for $20 million, everybody's like, oh, you overpaid.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're like, wow, wildly underpaid. And it's like, how did it swing that much? Baseball, there's no fucking rule.
Yeah.
Like, you got guys who are you got Trevor Bauer right now making way too much fucking money
Mm-hmm.
to be a guy who's never going to be able to make that valuable.
Yeah. And I think, too, how you phrased it was good. It's like what they think of them. Trevor Bauer built up this whole persona, and regardless of stats and things, he changed people's opinions, their minds, about who he is, what they're going to get out of him.
Yeah.
And he had a Cy Young season. He had all his publicity, blah, blah, blah. So people looked at him differently, and they said, you know what? You're worth that. Sure, we'll give it to you.
So then then every team who thinks they're about to be good
Mm-hmm.
should sign their player. Like, the Mets right now should sign everyone.
Yeah.
To as
Look
long
what
of
the
a
Braves
contract
did
as they
with
can.
Albies.
Yes.
That's
Well,
they were approaching like, you know what? We got this team.
Well, also,
here.
Acuna's on an 8-year, $100 million deal.
Yep.
Right? Like,
That's a steal.
They stole him.
Mm-hmm.
Stole him. Because they bought out his younger years, and we talked about that. I like that. You
Yep.
signed him for that contract young. The guy who completely turned all of it upside down on its head is Tatis, because he signed it too, but he also got paid,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like, his agent worked it that, you guys can buy us out for less than you'd have to pay in the future. You're not going to have to pay us $50 million. But you're going to pay us, $25, $30 million a year. And Acuna has to be looking at it like, I got hosed, But if you're the Mets, like, you better sign Conforto, because he's going to do the numbers that he's been doing his whole career. But now he's got Lindor, Alonso, Mcneal, all these guys. That team's going to win games. If they win a World Series, how are you going to sign everybody? Everybody wants it.
Mm-hmm.
Mets payroll is going to be $240 million.
Yep.
You're currently underpaying too many people.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from? But, like, that's why I say, like, it shouldn't be that it shouldn't be that we won, so you're finally worth the money. Right? Because then again, why is Mike Trout making any money? He doesn't win.
Yeah.
Got one of the worst winning percentages in baseball.
Yep.
So I don't know, man.
That's why we talked about it a bunch of times. Like, is that person worth it if you guys don't win? What are you paying for then? You're just paying for a great player. It's not actually giving you anything that you're really trying to do. So
and that's why, like, a bunch of years back, I was like, hey, if the Mets really wanted to make a move at something, right? You send Dom Smith, you send Conforto, you send Steven Matz, you send something else, and everybody was like, oh, you're crazy. If I'm building
for Mike Trout, you're saying?
For Mike Trout,
yeah, I know.
And you've heard me say
Yes,
this
I have.
before, and people are like, you're absolutely nuts, you're out of your minds. But, like, if I'm right now the Angels, I could win if I traded Mike Trout.
You could, absolutely.
I would start winning almost overnight if I was willing to move Trout.
I think
because
that's-
I already have Rendon.
Yep.
I already have Shohei. I already have this lineup that can mash like the baseball.
Yep.
I could get back 2 high-end starters and future studs for Trout's name right now. And if I traded him to, let's use it as the perfect example. If I went to the Yankees today, right, I could get their best young starting pitcher. I could get Gleyber Torres. I could then get anything else I want out of their whole minor league system. Free up $40 million a year. All that contract, all that money, all that stuff. Bring those players over. My lineup does not get much worse. My starting pitching gets way better. I will win more games by trading Trout.
Yep.
And that's what I think is the craziest about these lists is, like, it looks like baseball doesn't know who's worth money. And maybe that goes back to why teams like the Marlins are able to dump everyone, become good overnight. It's like they're just using guys. This just doesn't make sense.
Yep. I think that's exactly how the Indians looked at Lindor's trade.
Yes.
Like, it's at some point having one guy that's great and everyone else super average is not valuable.
But now they bring in his replacement, potential other guys replace all this, free up the money. give opportunity for young pitchers to move in because Carrasco's gone, do all this stuff. Yeah, like the Indians reset, reloaded, and I don't think they're much worse.
Yep.
Right? Are they worse at a single position? Yes. But when you're telling me that there's so many guys who matter for winning with baseball, and a guy who bats is only going to come up and get what amounts to being 12% of the at-bats, 13% of the at-bats, like how much does your percentage of good really affect the overall score? And when you have a team like the Mets who is a player away, right? Like, hey, pitching staff ready, this ready, bullpen ready, give us a superstar. You can flip a switch and the team is now, I expect the team to win 100 games. If they don't win 100 games, I think the Mets underperformed.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't see a reason. If they had the DH, they'd be even better. Who could you trade right now and just instantaneously get better as an organization? I'd trade Trout in a heartbeat. And I could get a trade like that because no one values a guy like Conforto enough. Because his name is Conforto and not Harper. But, like, if it was Harper, you'd be like, oh, okay, we could do that trade. That's enough of an even swap. But it's like, just look at the numbers. Like, all we're doing is punching math equations into the – and I know that baseball diehards will hate this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across 162 games, guys, punch in the – that's what the Yankees do. That's why the Yankees have not been able to win, is because the Yankees are so deep on their analytics. And the same team I would put in the same similar situation is the Braves. They've done such a good job of building regular season rosters that the numbers play out well every year, and it gives them the chance. But then those same numbers are the reason why they aren't special and they can't take the next step.
You need outliers.
You need an outlier.
Yeah.
And those outliers are the guys that you think like a Lindor, right? People are assuming that Trout's an outlier.
Yep.
You assume he would level you up.
But he's not getting you there, so you don't actually know.
So nobody knows. So what are we paying for?
Yep. If I were them and I was going to trade Trout, I would go after a young starter to add to that rotation.
Yep.
Go for a decent center fielder to fill your spot. And then a couple other young guys, like you said, to kind of bolster the future.
Yeah.
That are up there, your top 10 prospect in your organization. And I think that's a pretty decent trade, especially if you get a guy like, I don't know, like a Giolito or a Bieber. That's like this young guy who's going to have this future that's going to help carry your team. That's a solid. You're, as much as you hate to say like, oh, he's the best player in the game, whatever. You're getting a lot of value. That's going to help your team win games.
And that's my thing. The best player in the game inherently is in that sport not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. In that sport, for sure.
In basketball, you can't pay a guy enough who's the like. I couldn't pay LeBron James enough money. Like, I could not pay him enough money because he has proven that it does not matter what he does. He will win.
Yep.
He knows the science of winning basketball better than anybody who's ever played the game, because in an analytic, scout the world, the best players from Spain, Argentina, anywhere, like if you're the best, you play in the NBA. You can't say that about the 70s teams that were playing.
Yep.
You can't say that about the really early Celtics and a guy like Wilt Chamberlain who was just dunking on dudes who were way smaller than him. Like, the world has been scoured for the best players. We have the best analytics. We have the best everything. So right now should be difficult to win for a single guy. Not for a single organization, because if you're good at finding talent, developing talent, you can win consistently. You can be the best.
Right,
still.
absolutely.
But he's done it no matter where the fuck he goes.
Yep.
So he's the best winner. No one else in the NBA can win like him.
Yep.
Steph Curry. Steph, you guys still have Wiggins, Kelly Oubre. You have Draymond Green. You have I think Weissman, who was just the second overall pick. So your team theoretically is more stacked than anything LeBron has ever had, and you can't win. LeBron did.
Yep.
He did it with Kevin Love. Kyrie was hurt. The dude both of those guys were out, and they were winning games against a roster that was way better than theirs.
Yep.
Right? Dellavedova was his best player besides him. Like, that shows you how he still was there winning games.
Yes.
Trout cannot do that.
Yep.
A starting pitcher can.
Yes, and I think too, and you're the way you're describing how LeBron plays, right? Like it's his effect on each and every game, right? And he has a hand in almost every play, and like there could be a day where Mike Trout goes 0 for 4, gets one fly ball. What was his value there? What was his impact? Now when we look on the flip side of that team, a guy like Shohei Ohtani can have an impact every game, and also go out there every 5 days, every 4 days if he wants to, and get you 7 innings, 1 run. So now you're talking about a lot of value, which is why we're talking about could he have the best season ever?
Yes.
Because of his impact, it's just a different level because of what else he can do there.
For sure. I guess my roundabout point is because baseball relies so much on 5 starting pitchers, right? 8 to 9 guys who are playing consistently, another 3 guys who are playing regularly, if not every day.
Yeah.
And then you have relievers at mass who are playing. You have literally of the 25 guys, you have 23 that really matter to success on a weekly basis. So when you have 23 guys who matter, one guy doesn't actually matter that much. But baseball pays guys like they matter the same way a basketball player matters. And it's not close. You have 8-man rotations in basketball, but you play both sides, offense, defense.
Yep.
And one guy, if he's worlds better than everybody else, can literally just go out and score on every possession. And if the other team misses even a little bit, the game is over.
Yep.
That one person, Mike Trout, can't go out and take the at-bat and just decide, I'm going to hit for every person in the lineup. That's not how it works.
Yep.
So he's just not as valuable as what you could get for him. I would rather get 4 players than have Mike Trout. I'd rather have give me a theoretical package. Like let's think, what's a theoretical package for Trout that you could think about inside the game? Like first off, who's an organization that has the star power money to pull the trigger on that?
To hold on to Trout?
Right.
Goodness. You'd have to go to like big market.
So I'm saying if we say we're going to go to a big market, let's say like the Chicago White Sox.
Okay.
Right? Are they ready to make their play to overtake the Cubs? Right?
Well, here's the thing. So let's say we'll use the White Sox. If you put Trout there,
yes.
What they're going to ask for effectively makes the White Sox the Angels.
Yes, so you're right.
So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You'd have to go to a team with a surplus of arms and a surplus of talent. So you're looking at the top 5 teams in the league, probably. You'd have to go to, I don't know, the Dodgers, right?
See, so I thought of the Dodgers. The Dodgers was my first thing because they just seem like they're reckless and bold.
Yes.
And they're out here and they're like,
because they could send Bellinger and Bueller and Gavin Lux, and now you have a good second baseman, an outfielder to replace him, and a pitcher that adds to the rotation. But I think the Dodgers recognize also that they don't need Trout. It doesn't really make their team better. If anything, it makes them worse, kind of.
Yeah.
So, who else? You know what I hate, but I also would love to see if and they just don't have the money for it, would be like the Rays. The Rays have so many guys.
So the Rays was me. I was gonna you trade Glasnow.
Yeah.
Right, and then
But I don't think they can afford him. It's not in their style of baseball.
Well, and I agree. Yes, I agree there. I think we both have the same kind of thought process on what it is. So like again, I don't want to use the Mets or the Yankees as the thing because I'm trying to separate it. So what about a team like Boston? Right?
I was gonna say, I don't know if they haven't actually. That's not true. They could do it. I think they would have had a better shot at it if they had kept Benintendi.
Okay.
Because maybe they go like Benintendi. They have some young guys like Chavis, Dalbec. Like maybe it would be probably more of a young guys thing because their pitching staff's kind of
Yeah.
So they'd probably just go more prospects at that point. But Trout would be obviously a step up from Bradley. Like he kind of replaces Mookie, like that.
Well,
kind
so
of
that's
thing.
the thing is that they needed to get out from underneath a lot of financial things at one point in time.
So
now they're more of, hey, I can bring the money back in, right? I can start to think, okay, I have more money that I can come in with, and I can do something, and maybe I shoot a shot, right? Maybe I send a bunch of prospects and I do stuff. Would that team be better? But you're right. Like, the real move is, if you're going to get a superstar, you have to be a team that's about to pop. So the question is, who's about to pop, right? Who's about to be somebody who can do it? It really does come down to the Mets already made their move, right?
Yep.
The Mets traded what amounted. So look what Lindor went for. He went for nothing.
Yeah.
Lindor was rated in this list as a top 10 player in the game, and he went for relatively a bag of sand.
Yep.
So the fact that he went for a bag of sand is kind of the point. I agree the Indians got better, right? Long term.
Yep.
If Jimenez is a good player, if Rosario can find a long-time position, if some of the prospects that they got otherwise can do some things, they got better. But the Mets got way better by just adding in that their weakness is now just somewhere else.
Yep.
Right? They immediately...
Shortstop's no longer a weakness. Their pitching rotation got a great piece that will be on the team at some point to play. That's great moves. I think if the Angels wanted to move him, because his contract is a huge deal of what you're taking on. If they had wanted to move him, I think it would have been as his last contract was ending. That was your prime time. Because at that point, you can send him somewhere else. Maybe he signs a shorter deal, same yearly worth, but you can move him around a little bit more. He can go different places, do whatever. But now you're looking at 14 years, 13 years, 300-something million, 400 million, whatever it was. That's a tough thing to be like, I'm going to take this
Alex
on.
Rodriguez moved, and he went to the Yankees, and the Yankees didn't have to give up a lot.
I don't know how many teams are really out there that are in the right position to do that.
I will use the Mets as the perfect example, and I'll make my case.
Okay.
You trade, right, Brandon Nimmo, right? You trade Dom Smith. Bypass that. Because we'll use big names. You trade Pete Alonso. You trade Brandon Nimmo. You trade Peterson, the pitcher. And you trade whoever you guys think is the top prospect in our organization.
They're going to want our catcher guy, probably. Alvarez.
Fine.
Yes.
Done. The Mets didn't give up anything that hurt them. Right? Yep. Dom Smith goes to first base. Center field is covered by Trout.
Pilar or somebody goes into left.
And you have Conforto and Trout in the outfield. You have Dom Smith playing every day. Your team is better, right? Your outfield is better. But the Angels are better. And that's the thing, is when a team is lacking depth, if they're too top-heavy, they need to be less top-heavy to win. And baseball just never seems to get that, right?
Yep.
And the Mets showed you can be top-heavy with pitching and you can get to a World Series because they didn't deserve at the time to be in the World Series in 2015.
If you can hold them down, you can
they
score a couple runs.
You could. The Dodgers could have had a longer run of success. They could have been the team for a lot longer. That 2015 Mets team kept them from being able to be that.
Yep.
Because they came out and they're like, our pitching staff is just so much better than everybody else's.
Yep.
And that's coming again by the end of this year.
Yeah.
The Mets are still loaded. Most of the guys who were there then in some capacity are here now. Degrom is that lead dog, right? Carrasco is going to be a good guy when his hamstring's feeling better. Syndergaard's going to be back at the end of the year. Stroman is at least some semblance of a top 100 player when he's on his stuff. The Mets will be it. The Mets will be there. And I think that's the kind of trade baseball needs. Is we haven't had a situation like outside of Lindor, but everybody's like, oh, well, who does he sign with? What if he doesn't re-sign with the Mets? But a guy like Trout needs to move. If they don't win this year, you got to move Trout.
Listen, I don't disagree. It's just going to be a tall order for them, I think.
Guys, with that, we're going to throw it to you guys. Do you think if the Angels don't win this year, do you think that they have to trade Mike Trout to someone else and restack their roster, reorganize? We appreciate you guys coming out today, listening. Remember, if you made it this far, like, subscribe, and let us know what you guys think, and we'll talk to you next time.
Later.
Baseball lifestyle, it's my lifestyle.